Alright, let's talk about the swords. I've decided to lump together both the laser swords with the regular swords because they have the same moveset and they behave very similarly, so let's talk about them.
Inferno's a big place. I mean, who'd have thought something like this would be just lying around? I can't promise you this thing is safe, but it should be pretty damn easy to use. How about you go give it a try?
First off, Pillow Talk and Bloody Moon. Pillow Talk, a vessel for the demonic being Katana, said to have seduced women by whispering sweet nothings during their dreams. Pillow Talk has incredible angel-killing power thanks to Radan's conjuring abilities. The demonic power summoned from the portal at the weapon's hilt takes the form of a strangely glowing green blade of light, capable of slicing foes cleanly in half. Now, Pillow Talk seems to be a term close to Hideki Kamiya's heart. It's a direct reference to the sword of Ushi Wakamaru, or Waka, from his 2006 game Okami, as well as the name of the closing credits music from Devil May Cry. Bayonetta Swords adds what seems to be a snowman-shaped charm to the hilt of the sword. Of course, it's also the term used for post-coital talk between lovers, so that's where the whispering sweet nothings in the weapon description comes from. Now, I'm the first to admit that my knowledge of Hindu mythology is shaky at best, so I can't verify for sure whether the Bayonetta wiki is correct in this regard. The wiki entry for Pillow Talk says that Mahavirakhana, I really hope I'm saying that right, can refer to the king of all Ashura according to the Chandogya Upanishad, Upanishads being a philosophical Hindu religious text. However, as you can imagine, this is a very long text, so I can't be bothered reading it, and a cursory Control-F on the translated text for key terms like Ashura, King, or Maha gave me nothing, so I think I can kind of say safely that this is a load of crap. The second more obvious reference is a Buddhist text, the Mahavirakhana Tantra. In Japan it's known as the Mahavirakhana Sutra, being one of the two central texts in the Shingon, True Word School, along with the Vajrasekhara Sutra. It was the first true Buddhist Tantra, the earliest comprehensive manual of Tantric Buddhism, and was probably written in the middle of the 7th century. While the Sanskrit text of the Tantra has been lost, it still survives in Chinese and Tibetan translations. The Tantra's teachings, which have been called cosmotheism, center upon Mahavairocana, in Japanese Dainichi Nyorai, the supreme cosmic Buddha, whose body forms the universe. Through elaborate mystic rituals with a distinctly Indian flavour, even involving certain Hindu deities, one is led to realise that all one's thoughts, words and actions are in reality Mahavairokanas. Now, Bloody Moon. An enigmatic weapon crafted by the Umbra Witches. This weapon is the pinnacle of their moon-driven technology and can emit various coloured blades depending on the demon held within. Incognito as a mild-mannered high school teacher, Jean defends her innocent students at all costs, transforming into the superheroine QTJ. Her blood-red blade will cut the ribbon and start class on the final points of justice. Bring evil to justice, QTJ, end their reign with her deadly dynamic J. Bloody Moon could be referencing a hunter's moon or a harvest moon. It's a traditional term for full moons that occur in autumn. The harvest moon is the full moon closest to the autumn equinox, and the hunter's moon is the full moon following it. Full moons rise at around sunset, and because the moon orbits the Earth the same direction that the Earth is spinning, the moon rises later each day. The harvest moon and hunter's moon are unique because the time difference between moon rises on successive evenings is much shorter than average. Bloody Moon is actually pretty special. If you wear the Umbran formal costume, Jean changes her taunt to Bring It, from Bayonetta. If you change the costume to the Umbran formal B, Jean takes on a heroic pose. God, I wonder what that's referencing.
Bring it!
Now let's talk about regular swords. A living katana pulsing with the heart of Ashura, the demon god of war. Always seeking blood, the blade will suck even the very souls out of its victims. Now I've already said the swords in many other episodes, but there really isn't much to say for either of them. Ashura doesn't actually seem to be a god, but could refer to the group of Hindu deities known as Asura. It's been mentioned by Khmer that when charging the sword, there was supposed to be an animation where the hilt of the sword would open and reveal Ashura's beating heart. However, this animation did not get linked in the final build, so it's still there somewhere. The weapons designer for the game, Minayuki Johnny Kotegawa, says that while Shiraba is based on a katana, it's a little different in that it's got a notch in the blade. The handguard is also designed to be the mark of the witches. Okay, gameplay-wise, the movesets for both of them, as in the laser sword and the regular sword, are exactly the same, and they even share the same combo counters in the pause menu, or the practice menu, loading menu. They have a unique combo, which is a very slow slashy combo. One of them ends in a stab, the other two end in a launcher, and they're all pretty slow and I very rarely use them. Of course, Shiraba also provides a kind of easy mode for the game if you just spam the punch kick punch attack. Now each punch with Shiraba or Pillow Talk can be modified to a charge attack that can damage enemies all around you. The charge has 2 levels, which is indicated by the sound that the sword makes when you hold down the punch button. And you can also charge a sword in the air, which can prove useful in stay in the air alfheims, as it gives you about, I think, 7 to 8 seconds of airtime. The launcher for the swords is slightly different from Bayonetta's other weapon launchers, in that if you hold down the punch button when you're launching, you'll rise up into the air with the enemy, and if you just tap the button, the sword will just launch the enemy. This goes for any of the combos that are in a launcher. You can also modify the basic 5-punch combo with the final barrage by either mashing the final punch or not. This changes the final wicked weave into either a stab or a slam. charging the sword performs what's called an aijutsu, Japanese for the art of drawing a sword. It's appropriate as when charging the sword, Bayonetta puts the sword back into its hilt before releasing it. There's also an achievement for doing this actually, if you kill 20 enemies using the charge attack on the sword. The perfect parry for the sword just performs an instantaneous version of the aijutsu, just looks really neat. Now, the sword does have a very special attack, the lock-on attack. If you hold down the lock-on button, Bayonetta will draw a magic circle, which can fire sword lasers, basically. This, like the charge, has 2 levels, and it's indicated by a flash around the 1 o'clock position for the first charge, and then a full circle for the full charge. And then you have to hit punch to fire the laser. You can't move around when you're doing this lock-on charge, so good luck trying to incorporate this into your regular gameplay. One thing I did find about this lock-on charge is that you can switch to other weapons if you time it correctly. It doesn't really do anything, it just makes it look a little funny. Now, Pillow Talk and Bloody Moon work in the same way, but they are a little bit weaker than Shiraba if they're not charged up. You can charge it to its much more useful form by charging it to the second charge level. Well, the annoying thing about the laser sword is that it doesn't have normal wicked weaves, except for the Witch Twist attack. But if you do fully charge up the laser swords, they will do damage equivalent to wicked weaves. As I've shown off, this Pillow Talk is good against Ridan, and it is also good against the boss of Angel Slayer because you can abuse the camera trick and just take pot shots at her. There's a cool little thing that you can do with Pillow Talk is that uncharged Pillow Talk bullet climax will work in Wicked Weave only Alfheims. And in case you're wondering, if you do use Pillow Talk in Angel Slayer mode, this does kind of trivialize most levels. Now for me, swords are a good introduction to dodge offset, as you can very clearly see when you hold down the charge button and dodge that you're still carrying the charge. I think it's a slightly better introduction than other weapons like the handguns.
Bring it.
And of course, if you can't beat Non-Stop Infinite Climax because you need to beat it to get the laser sword, you can unlock Pillow Talk for a cost of, I think it's 1 or 2 million halos at the cheat phones in Chapter 2. Okay, let's take a quick look at sword making, specifically Japanese sword making, given that it's a katana. Japanese sword making came by way of Korea, the oldest blades dating back to the 4th or 5th century AD. Although the Japanese originally forged thrusting swords similar to the Koreans, by the time of the Heian period, 794 to 1185 AD, the sword had now taken on its distinctive curved blade meant for slashing. The reason for this was due to the mounted horsemen who had more use for slashing their enemies rather than stabbing. There are many types of Japanese swords that differ by size, shape, field of application and method of manufacture. Probably the most famous is the katana, which I'll be focusing on. The katana is a sword worn by the samurai class of feudal Japan and is also commonly known as a samurai sword. The katana is characterized by its curved, slender, single-edged blade and is renowned for its sharpness, strength, and ability to attract weeaboos.
And this was just a random cutting video. Plus I'm going to show, I'm not really going to say homemade weapons because they're basically just sticks, but I did some things to them and they're kind of interesting, so I'll get to that later. But for now, I'm just going to do some random cutting.
There's also a grip long enough to accommodate 2 hands and a circular or squared handguard. The skills needed in Japanese sword making are not just limited to the bladesmith, but also involves a polisher and various other artisans to make the fittings, such as the sheath, hilt, and handguard. I'll be honest though, going through the entire process is pretty long, so I'll just focus on the 2 most time-consuming parts, the forging and the polishing.
Watch this.
Now traditionally, katanas are made from a specialized Japanese steel known as temahagane, or jewel steel. Temahagane is produced by taking pieces of steel with high and low carbon content and folding it over itself several times, similar to making kind of like a sharp croissant. The higher the carbon content of steel, the harder and less ductile it gets. While this technique has been attributed to Japanese smiths, this technique likely came via the Chinese during the Tang dynasty, when the Japanese made an effort to recruit Chinese smiths and other craftsmen. However, this technique is found in many other cultures and does not seem to have a single point of origin. It is known as pattern welding, and while blending different steels is not necessary with modern-day steel-making techniques, it's still used by custom knife makers for its cosmetic effects. Pattern welding serves to even out the carbon content of these two steels, thus decreasing the number of potential weak points, and burning off most of the impurities present in poorer quality Japanese steel. The folding of different steels also creates the grain. Finally, the differing layers of steel provide alternating layers of hardness. The hardness of the high carbon steels combined with the ductility of the low carbon steels to form the property of toughness in the blade. The curvature of the katana is achieved via a process known as differential hardening, or differential quenching. This involves coating the blade in several layers of a wet clay slurry, with the edge of the blade being coated in a thinner layer than the rest of the blade. The blade is then heated, then quenched in water or oil. The slurry causes only the blade's edge to be hardened, and also causes the blade to curve due to the difference in densities of the steel. This process also creates a distinct line down the sides of the blade called the hamon, which is made distinct by polishing. After the blade is forged, it is then sent to be polished. Polishing a blade is actually a crucial part of the sword-making process, taking as long or longer than the forging of the sword itself. The polisher, or togishi, is tasked with refining the shape of the blade as well as improving its aesthetic value. Polishing and sharpening the blade is done by way of large stone grinders. An inexperienced polisher can actually ruin the beauty of a blade, as well as ruin its functional, artistic, and monetary value by disrupting its geometry by grinding away too much steel. There's two stages to polishing: shitaji togi, foundation polishing, and shiyagi togi, finish polishing. Shitaji togi sets the shape of the blade. It is first inspected by the polisher for straightness, and is corrected if necessary. Damage is also repaired through careful reshaping. Modern-day polishers use artificial water stones for the foundation polishing, but still use natural stones for finishing, as artificial stones produce inferior results. Shiyagi togi is where the polisher places the mirror-like finish on the blade. However, the blunt edge of the katana is often given a matte finish to emphasize the hamon, or hamon. I'm not sure if it's pronounced hamon because that's Spanish ham. The finishing process brings out and enhances all details of a blade so that they are readily visible for observation and analysis, which entails results that must be free of any visual imperfections. There's many other artisans involved with the blade once it's been polished. You can actually check out the Wikipedia page for Japanese sword mountings for the full list, but the tsuba, or handguard, is one of the more important finishes for a blade. The tsuba contributes to the balance of the weapon and to the protection of the hand. It's mostly meant to be used to protect the hand from sliding onto the blade during thrusts, as opposed to protecting from an opponent's blade. During the Muromachi period 1333 to 1573, and the Momoyama period 1573 to 1603, tsuba were more for functionality than for decoration, and were made from stronger metals and designs. During the Edo period 1603 to 1868, there was peace in Japan, so tsuba became more ornamental and made less practical. Tsuba are usually finely decorated and nowadays are collector's items. Tsuba were made by whole dynasties of craftsmen whose only craft was making these handguards. Traditional swords, not reproductions, are made are still made in Japan to this day, and as you can expect are very expensive. For high quality reproductions, we're talking in the $15,000 to $50,000 range. Lower quality replica swords go as low as $10, and these are usually machine made and sharpened. Replica swords do not have a sharp blade but can still be easily used as a stabbing weapon. Swordsmiths in Japan, like many other artisans, need to be licensed, requiring a long apprenticeship period. There are swordsmiths outside of Japan who use Japanese techniques, but as it is actually illegal to export the traditional sword steel in its raw form, these swords will be different from actual Japanese swords.